Okay, so we're gonna start and try something a little bit different. I know that that's a little bit trippy there, but I am going to try to take notes on the screen today to make things easier. Yeah, we got some fancy technology that's happening here, so I'm sure
A
that.
little bit bigger.
Yeah, I'm going to try to make that a little bit bigger. We'll have some growing pains here. This is going to be great for people watching the video online
Yes.
versus seeing that and then the notes get erased and everything. But it may be terrible for us. So we're going to work on that.
Okay.
And I'll see. And I also like the way that this is right here. If I do need to write something on the board, we're going to experiment today, see if this works.
Cool.
And I'm also, I'm going to guess that my face is huge on the camera. Yeah, this is looking right up my nose. Oh, well.
Actually, no.
We'll just, you don't think so?
It wasn't for us.
Okay.
Maybe
It only repeated
online.
itself like 10 times.
Yeah. All right, let's see here. Is that better?
Nice, yes.
Okay. So I think that should be pretty good. And I have this set up in kind of a canvas because I imagine the notes will start to sprawl and then I can draw like arrows and that kind of stuff. So we're going to try some things here. But we are in Genesis chapter 25 today. Chapter 26. Get my chapters right. We will probably also jump back to 25 for a couple of things. But Genesis chapter 26 is where we're going to start, and we're going to, Lord willing, go through 36. So that is our task for today, and this organizes very beautifully around this key principle here. So I wanted to just lead with that so you can start seeing this. And this really is not anything new. I'm pretty sure that you could kind of take all of Genesis and extract this principle from Genesis itself, and you would see that pattern. I'll give you a couple of examples as we go today, but what we're going to be focusing on is humans make a mess of everything. We really do. Every single hero that we have studied, and I really hate that term, but we often use that term, the biblical heroes that we have. God is the hero in the Bible, but we have these human characters who are very, very flawed, and thank God that he has recorded their flaws, because that gives you and me hope, which is part of this principle, that despite the fact that humans keep on sinning, even when they're trying to do the will of God and they're sinning, and we're going to see a lot of that today, God remains faithful.
Yeah.
Amen to that. And here's a couple of things that we're going to see. Number one, he does deal with sin. That sometimes spawns consequences. But often you're going to see that paired with grace and mercy. And so while he does deal with the sin, and there is judgment, and there is sometimes consequences, sometimes he deals with it in a way that you see a lot of grace and mercy there. But the other nice thing is, thank God that he doesn't leave us in that sin. Because as we continue to mess up, or as we're going to see Jacob continuing to mess up today, God is faithful to sanctify him, to make him more and more like Christ. Sanctify is a really big word that just means make us more holy or set apart, make us more like Christ. All right? And then number three, he is faithful to accomplish his will in his way and in his time, not ours. He takes all of that mess to accomplish his purpose. And we can add on here, just as he promised. And we've seen God's promises, and he always fulfills them. Okay, so let's back this up first with Genesis. We can see that, right? God had created this perfect creation, put Adam and Eve in the garden, and notice the choices that he gave them. We oftentimes think that God is like this mean parent that's like, stay in your playpen, there are no toys in there, I'm not going to change your diaper, deal with it. And that's simply not how God acts. He's like, I'll change your diaper for you. Here's all of these toys that you can play with. You can do everything, just don't climb out of the playpen because it's dangerous out there. I'm doing construction work or whatever. The metaphor is beginning to break down. But the point is, Adam and Eve had all these trees to eat from. God said, just don't eat from that one. And so they chose because they wanted to be like God. We don't really know all of their motivation. We know some. The fruit looked really good. They wanted to have this knowledge of good and evil apart from God. I don't know if they wanted to do him a favor or something like, oh, okay, we don't have to go to him as much if we can be like him, cool. But they broke his law. They sinned against him. And what did God do? He immediately dealt with sin. There were some serious consequences that happened. He kicked them out of the garden as kind of a big ultimate consequence. There was separation between God and man. At the same time, however, he covered them. They did, and we talked about this, they didn't die that day. There were a lot of other death consequences that did happen that day, but he killed an animal instead and covered them. So that's him dealing with sin. Where do we see them being sanctified? We don't know much about Adam and Eve, but we do know that their children were offering sacrifices in the very next chapter. And so obviously something happened where Adam is helping to instill this idea in his kids. We need to offer sacrifices to God. Probably that's something that God told them, like, I've killed this first animal, now continue offering sacrifices. And so there's this ongoing relationship with God of, really, my sin is in front of me, and I'm dealing with my sin only because I trust that with this sacrifice, that is atoning for my sin because God is continuing to cover me. So it's like they're continuing to reenact that Genesis 3 sacrifice over and over again, okay? And so that's that continued sanctification process. We also know that, and I believe it was Terry that brought this up, I don't remember for sure, but I think she's absolutely correct about this, is that we see in Seth's line that people are walking faithfully with God. So Adam and Eve definitely instilled that in their kids and their grandchildren and great-grandchildren, because that line continued to walk with God. And that's the line that we're going to continue to study today. And then God had made a promise. This is now point 3 here. God had made a promise that from Eve's line, there is going to be a seed. And this seed will crush the head of Satan. And so Eve goes, I have had a child, Cain. Maybe this is the one. God has fulfilled the promise right here. But what do we see? We see evil in Cain's heart, and he kills his brother. And so not only is that seed marred, but his brother is dead. And so Eve has no children. So it's like, oh my goodness, God is not faithful to his promises. What's going to happen? Well, Seth is born. And so God continues to make a way for his ultimate seed, Jesus Christ, to be born. And then we see, okay, Noah comes on the scene. He's going to be here. He's faithful to God. Oh, but he gets drunk and naked and he's sinning and oh my goodness. But God deals with that sin. We see Noah offering sacrifices. We see faithfulness of Noah's line, and God continues to provide them children. Okay, so we see this pattern repeated. So this shouldn't be really new to us, but it's going to be very, very evident in today. And I think Jacob offers a fantastic picture for us about what our Christian walk looks like sometimes. And so if you feel down about yourself and your own unfaithfulness, I hope this encourages you today. So if this still is a little bit, you're not quite certain about it, it will make more sense because it's kind of the outline for these chapters. We're going to see this in Jacob's life today. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at Genesis 26. The very first thing that we see here, so we're in Isaac's life. Isaac doesn't get a lot of page time. We have a big story about Abraham. We had a big story about Jacob, and Isaac is, he just has a little bit of stuff in there. We mostly know him as that old man that is becoming blind, and Jacob deceives him, that story. But there is a very neat part here at the very beginning that is helpful to us to take a look at. So let's go to, I think this is verse 2 in chapter 26. The Lord appeared to him and said, "Do not go down to Egypt. Live in the land I will tell you about. Stay in this land as an alien, and I will be with you and bless you. For I have given you all these lands to you and your offspring, and I will confirm the oath that I swore to your father Abraham. I will make your offspring as numerous as the stars of the sky. I will give your offspring all these lands, and all the nations of the earth will be blessed by your offspring." Do you see that? That continues. From Eve, that promise trickles down to Abraham. Abraham got a very explicit blessing from the Lord. Here's all these things that are going to happen. And now Isaac is getting that same one. So we see, okay, the Lord was faithful. Isaac was not sacrificed. Last week we looked at that God made a way. And so now Isaac is receiving that same blessing. And then we see that, okay, there's continuing to be this offspring and there's this blessing. So God's promise is happening here. So he's going to accomplish his will in his way in his time as he promised. Abraham had to wait a long time. You remember that? God made this promise. Abraham was unfaithful because he decided, you know what? I'm going to take matters into my own hands here. And well, it was technically Sarah's idea, but he went along with it. Sarah's like, here's my handmaid. Why don't you sleep with her and get an offspring because I'm barren? And so that was Abraham's sin. God dealt with that, right? No. This is your son. And he continued to work in Abraham's life to accomplish his plan. But right in here with this sin issue, we have serious consequences that are coming up. And I want to start tracking some of these because these are not consequences that are trivial. They are consequences that are ongoing. And so with Abraham's sin, with with Sarah's handmaid, we get Ishmael. Ishmael's offspring are going to be at war with Israel, and they're going to have many, many conflicts. And so what basically happens here is whenever we see human sinfulness basically trying to take God's promises and do it on our own strength, there are serious lasting consequences as a result of that. And so here's one right here with Ishmael. From Ishmael, we get several enemies of Israel, which we'll track through history. And we're going to see that here again in a minute. Same thing with Adam and Eve, right? They sin, and immediately their children are murdering. And then it gets so bad that God wipes out most of the human race at that time. So sin has lingering consequences. And so we can also take a look at these principles and zoom way out over all of human history, that God deals with sin globally, but he also provided grace and mercy globally through Jesus Christ.
Also, this is where second and third generation,
Yeah.
because I've done something and it doesn't affect my kids.
Mm-hmm.
That in the Bible,
Yep.
the sins of the fathers just are passed down.
That's right. When God says that to Moses, he says, hey, the sins of the father pass to the kids. And he's not like, I'm going to, keep punishing your kids for what you did, but it's like your sin lingers with them and passes down. That's the consequence of it. Yeah.
Do you think God tested Abraham when his wife was barren? I mean, for the length of time, and he was going to bless him. Why not?
I can't say that with absolute certainty that God tests him, and I want to make a distinction here. James does create a distinction between testing and tempting. We need to be careful about that. I know you're not asking about temptation. We are tempted when we see something that we want and we lust after that. That's temptation. God does test people. God does not tempt people. So maybe he was testing his faith. I think we do see that God does that. He definitely does that with Job, as we'll see. He definitely tested Abraham. It actually did say that in when he is going to offer Isaac.
Yeah.
So I think that we could probably say, yes, he was also testing his faith there. And what that means is not putting him in danger, but it's part of discipline, right? It's almost like when you are lifting weights or when you're doing exercise, you are stressing your muscles, you're testing your muscles, and you come out on the other side stronger. And so I think probably that is what's happening.
Yeah, but see, he didn't lust after the handmaiden, right?
Correct.
So
Yeah.
it wasn't like like what we think of as adultery or unfaithfulness, was it?
Yeah,
See
so
what I'm
so
saying?
what I'm saying is God is testing him in the length of time it took for that promise to be fulfilled, but it wasn't God's will for him to have a child with someone else other than Sarah. God used that, but it wasn't what he was wanting Abraham to do.
But it was still adultery.
Yeah, it was adultery. Yep, that's right.
And you thought Abraham knew that it was adultery, or
Mhm. Yeah. Now they didn't. So this does get a little bit.
Well, yes, you would.
This does get a little bit confusing. Some people definitely debate this because we see it's a little bit weird to us, right? We see people marrying their relatives. like Isaac and Rebecca, for example, and then also Jacob and Rachel and Leah. Those are all relatives, so that's kind of weird to us. But that law hadn't come until much later. In the time of Moses, that becomes forbidden. But then people are like, well, okay, so if that law didn't come, then, okay, what marriage, maybe this was okay for Jacob to have essentially 4 wives, well, technically 2 wives and then 2 concubines, and Abraham has a concubine, and, well, maybe this is okay because this is before the law. However, we can go all the way back to Genesis when God made one man and one woman and instituted marriage right there. And so that message had been passed down. And what we see is humans immediately start breaking that. Lamech in Genesis chapter 5, I think it is, or 4, no, Genesis chapter 4, is the first man that's recorded to have 2 wives. And it's very specifically called out because we see man breaking the covenant of marriage. So I think that it's not okay for us to say, okay, well, adultery wasn't a thing until Moses had the law. God instituted the marriage law on day 1. And so Abraham is breaking that vow, basically. Yep. The other thing you see there is every single time a man in this patriarch line here has multiple wives or a wife and concubines, there's always conflict and an escalation in sin. And it's the most clear in Jacob's life. It is a absolute mess. And that is why this part here is important. God is faithful despite human unfaithfulness, and he will accomplish his will, because what he does is he takes that, he's like, boy, you royally messed up here. You've got 2 wives and 2 concubines, Jacob. And he still uses it to fulfill his will.
We got
It's
Solomon.
crazy. Yes, Solomon is even worse, right? And he still uses that. But Solomon had huge sin escalation. When we get there, we'll see that. Solomon's sin in having, goodness, what is it? Is it hundreds? Is it like 600, 800? 700. It's a lot, many hundreds, right? And that caused Israel to go into idolatry for centuries. Bringing all those women in, you can trace that, because not only then did the kingdom split, which was technically a result of David's sin with Bathsheba. God said, as a result, your kingdom is going to split. But then, because of Solomon bringing in these foreign wives that he had in concubines, they brought in idolatry into the land and directly caused a number of people to fall. And the kingdom of Israel, the northern kingdom, never had a single good king. All of them turned to idolatry. So the sins that we have catastrophic consequences down the line. So Abraham and Ishmael, that's one example where Ishmael then becomes a very powerful ruler, and many kings. I think God promises that 10 kings will come from him, and many of those become Israel's enemies. So we see that come down the road. Here's the other thing that is really fascinating here, and this is why I need lots of room in this notepad here. We also see that there is a war against the seed. So notice when God promises in Genesis 3:15 that there's going to come someone from Eve's line, and that someone is going to crush Satan's head, notice it also says that you are going to bruise his heel. Okay, so there's going to be this war, this enmity, and God says that actually, I don't know if it's in the beginning of 3:15 or if it's in 3:14, but God says, I'm going to put enmity or warfare between you, Satan, and humans. If you fast forward all the way to Revelation, which gives you a nice cap to the Bible, we see a war between a woman and the dragon, which is again a representation of Eve and Satan. But really what it is a warfare against God, who has promised this seed who's to come, because this woman in Revelation is with child, this promised child. And Satan, this dragon, is like waiting for the child to pop out, and he's going to destroy the child. And so that is the war of all of the scriptures. And so what you're going to see is God has promised Abraham, I'm going to give you a promised child. And as a result of Abraham's sin there, we have Ishmael creates conflict later on for Israel, attacking Israel. And we could even say attacking Isaac. Do you remember after Isaac, the promised son, is born, Sarah sees Ishmael mistreating Isaac. And so Abraham sends her away. So here's this promised seed who's here, who is now being harassed by Ishmael. So Abraham tried to do it his way, and through sin, that caused consequences that puts at risk this chosen seed. But God comes in and protects the chosen seed. He also protects Ishmael, which is amazing. And he's faithful there because he sees hope for all humans in Christ. And so he's also protecting Ishmael, which is really fascinating. But later, Ishmael's going to come back and attack Israel, his descendants, I mean. And that's putting the seed at risk. There's warfare there. We're going to see that same thing with Jacob. So I'm going to put with Isaac here in this very next chapter. Okay, so I'm going to put his name up here. We'll see how this happens. Okay, all right. I went on kind of a tangent there, but we have this promise to Isaac. We read the first couple of verses of 26. I want to show you the significance of the well in chapter 26, and then we'll move on. Or wells, plural, rather. So here Isaac he's in this area. He's still a foreigner in this land. The only land they own currently is the tomb where Sarah is buried, and a little bit of land around that. So Isaac, verse 12 of chapter 26, sowed seed in the land. In that year he reaped 100 times what was sown, and the Lord blessed him. He became a man very rich and kept getting richer until he was very wealthy. He had flocks of sheep, herds of cattle, many slaves, and the Philistines were envious of him. So they stopped up the wells that his father's servants had dug in the day of his father Abraham and filled them with dirt. This actually happens multiple times, where he goes and moves then to another spot, opens up another well, they stop that one up, and they keep going multiple times. The reason that this is significant is God is protecting this war against this seed right here, and he's working on giving Isaac the land. Remember, he promised Abraham, I'm going to give you this land, walk through it. But they don't own it. So he's like, is God being unfaithful to his promise? No. God will accomplish his will in his time. So this sin that's happening to these Philistines that are coming in and stopping up the wells, God finally gives him one and protects that one. And then he has peace and he's able to stay and he settles in the land. And what's really incredible about that is you fast forward thousands of years later, and then Christ comes and meets the woman at the well and talks to her about how he is the well of life. And you have this really nice parallel between the two. That here you have to have water to survive, right? And here Isaac is looking for God's faithfulness in this dry and desert land. And he's like, I want to have a place to settle down. And people are making war against me by stopping up this well. So I don't have life here. I can't support my family here. And God is faithful to provide a well. And ultimately, the eternal well in Jesus Christ, his son. So it's just a really beautiful parallel. So very small story there in chapter 26, and it's like that is like one of the only stories we have of Isaac, but a very, very powerful one. Okay, let's move into chapter 27, where we have the stolen blessing with Isaac. You know this story, where we have deceptive Jacob and deceptive Rebekah, and we have old man Isaac, and he's wanting to bless Esau. And so Jacob has this big theatrical thing where he pretends to be Esau and steals the blessing. This is a very common story that we get in Sunday school, so maybe you're familiar with it. There is so much more going on here, and it parallels this right up here, and it parallels Genesis and the fall, Genesis 3 and the fall of mankind very well. This is not as simple as just Jacob deceiving. This is an entire family that is sinning against God and has severe consequences. Okay, so here's where we get Isaac's little portion down here, the war against this seed and consequences. Okay, so Isaac is sinning against God by trying to bless Esau. Why is that? Because God told him, that the older is going to serve the younger. He said, when Rebekah had twins, it was prophesied that the older is going to serve the younger, and the younger is where the blessing is going to go. But here, Isaac has decided, I'm going to bless Esau. Okay, look at this. Chapter 27, verse 1. When Isaac was old and his eyes were so weak he could not see, he called his son Esau and said to him, my son, I want you to go do these things. Verse 4, so that I can bless you before I die. He has decided not to honor God's request. He is going to bless Esau. So
You would have known about it?
he knew about it.
Okay.
Yeah, he had in his heart decided, I'm going to bless my older son. Why? Because I love my older son better. This is very clearly favoritism. This is very common in the Middle East culture, and especially in this ancient culture. You can definitely tell that he favors Esau and Rebekah favors Isaac. Okay, so Isaac is sinning. Well, who else is sinning? Esau is sinning.
Oh, it's white.
Yep,
The whole family.
the whole family. Esau is sinning against Isaac. You recall that he already sold his birthright to him. Do you remember this? Where
Yes.
he's starving in a few chapters earlier.
I don't even remember reading that. I guess because I taught the other story so many times. And
Yeah. He's famished, and he comes home from hunting all day. He hasn't caught anything, and there's Jacob making stew because he's a homely boy. He's making his stew, and Esau's like, "Oh, give me some of that red stuff there," and Isaac is like, "Dude, sell me your birthright," and he's like, "Fine."
Isaac or Jacob?
Sorry, Jacob.
Yeah,
Man, if
yeah,
I could
Isaac.
get that clear, that would be great.
Do we need to change it?
Yes, sorry, everybody.
Because I'm thinking, no.
Man, you'd think I'd be able to get this correct. Okay, so yeah, Jacob. He's sinning against Jacob. So he sold his birthright. Now, if you read between the lines, and actually it does say it pretty specifically, and you read a couple of different places, also read into the New Testament, I believe it's in Hebrews, and I think Peter also brings it up, that Esau was a profane man who despised his birthright. He did not care about that. To him, he was willing to sell it for a bowl of stew because he did not care. In other words, he also did not care about God. That is very clear from his personality as we read a little bit later. And so what he's doing here is he would have known about this prophecy too. He's trying to usurp Jacob's position. He's going against that contract that they had as well. But to other people's points, yes, Rebekah here is not innocent either, right? She's sinning. We'll put her on the sin list because she's like, well, let's she's trying to accomplish the will of God, right? Jacob is the one who's supposed to be blessed, but deception is a sin. We cannot paint this with Sunday school rose-colored glasses. She is deceiving her husband. She's bringing her son into it. This is sinful. This is not the correct way to accomplish God's blessing. Trusting God would have been a better way, right? This is our human unfaithfulness part that we are dealing with right here. And of course, Isaac is in on this as well. Jacob is in on this as well. Goodness sakes. And he is going along with it. He's not just like, well, I don't know. I don't have any opinion on it. This is who he is. This is his favorite day of the week, is deceiving day. Why? Because Jacob means deceiver in our English. We got to start dealing with this now. This is a new category. I'll just be scrolling around between all of these different ones here. But let's start talking about some names. In English, it's deceiver, but his actual name is heel grabber. That's what it would have been. Nope, not that heel. This heel grabber. Okay? So think of it as you're standing there, you're leaning against something, and someone comes behind you and yanks your heel out from under you, and you fall over. right? This is not kind, but this is how he was named because Esau is coming through the birth canal, and Jacob is like, hey, there's a way out for me. So he grabs onto Esau's heel and whoop, comes out with him. And so they're like, man, you're a heel grabber. But heel grabber is kind of a play on words, like literally that's what he was doing. But think of it as like, I get what I want through somebody else. But that also is their word for deceiver, or one who works against someone. So that's his name.
So what's Esau?
That's interesting that you bring that up, because what we're going to start seeing here is God is using his word with a lot of really amazing poetry and names and plays on word to teach us spiritual truths. Okay, so let's dig into this. Where do we see Jacob acting out his name? When he gets Esau to sell his birthright. And we also get Esau's name from this as well. Esau, or also Edom, okay? Red. That's what his name means. He comes out red and hairy. Some people have said that this is some kind of extreme condition. He's not like a little hairy, but he's extremely hairy, like looks like a wolf kind of thing. I don't know if I would go that far, but the fact that Jacob will eventually deceive his father by putting on full skins that are extremely hairy, not just like a little bit, but a lot, kind of makes you think, yeah, this guy was extremely hairy. But that red is really important, because then what happens is Esau comes home and he sees this red stew. And he's like, give me some of that. What he literally says in Hebrew is, give me that red stuff there. That's his name. And Jacob goes, red stuff. Interesting, Mr. Reddy. I'm going to use this red stuff to deceive Mr. Reddy. And he steals his birthright. This is going to come back around with a different color in a few chapters. So what he's doing is he's using other people's personalities, other people's names against them. Okay? Now, God had promised Jacob, I'm going to bless you. Jacob takes it into his own hands and sins by deceiving to try to get it.
Where was that at, that he said, I will bless Jacob? Do you remember what?
Yep, let's go back a couple of chapters, I think, here. Chapter 25, verse 19.
Okay.
These are the family records of Isaac. Isaac was 40 years old. Let's see here. She's childless. 22. Okay, Rebecca conceives, but the children inside of her struggled with each other. That word struggle, wrestle,
Yeah.
will come back again as well. Why is this happening to me, she said. So she went and inquired of the Lord, which is smart. That is the right thing to do. That is what they should have been doing later, is inquiring of the Lord. And the Lord said to her, 2 nations are in your womb. 2 peoples will come from you and be separated. One people will be stronger than the other. The older will serve the younger. Okay, so that's it right there.
Okay.
And then you can get that, the story of the birthright and all of that happens in that chapter as well. Okay?
And in their history, at least the Hebrews, everything went to the first son.
Yep.
And it seems like God uses always the second son.
Yes, not always, but during this time, yes, absolutely, he does that. The firstborn is also very important, but the second-born sons sometimes are as well. It's kind of an interesting how he does it. In other words, he's going to do it the way he says, and then we try to engineer it on our own devices. Now, that doesn't mean that we can't do things, right? But what's missing when when Sarah says, hey, sleep with my maid and get a child from her, Abraham didn't inquire of the Lord.
Right.
When Jacob knows he's supposed to get the blessing and Esau comes hungry, he didn't inquire of the Lord and say, is this right for me to deceive? Right? No, he just did it. And that's what we see, is it's human unfaithfulness. We're not going to God, we're doing it on our own strength.
So a lot of it's also about impatience.
Impatience, yes, exactly. So there's consequences here, which we're going to, of course, see. Esau's descendants. They are Israel's enemies as well. When Israel comes back into the promised land, it is Edom, which his race began to be called, that stands against Israel on several occasions. And so this deception right here, while he was trying to get God's blessing, He was trying to grab at it like a heel grabber, grab God's blessing. That was sinful, and it turned into this struggle. Had he submitted to God and trusted God, things would have been very, very different.
There has never been a family that hasn't had issues.
That's right.
You know,
That's
they
right.
talk about that family is gonna be, I don't know. I'm not the first.
Yeah, we struggle with sin, but thanks be to God that he's still faithful, because God worked through this to send Jacob away from Esau. Esau had promised he was going to kill Jacob. We see this at the end of chapter 27. And Rebecca finds out about it, so she's like, Jacob, go away, go to our relatives up there and find for yourself a wife up in that area, right? So he's going to escape. But then we go, okay, hold on a minute, but Jacob is supposed to be this man who's blessed by God, but now he's away from his family. He owns nothing except the clothes on his back. So we're like, oh no, God's promise is in danger. This war against this seed here, the result of Isaac's deception and all of these other people deceiving each other, is that now Esau and Jacob are essentially at war. And we have a repeat of Cain and Abel. That's the reader is really scared about that if we're paying attention. This is like Cain and Abel all over again. So Jacob flees, and here's what's really cool is we have in chapter 28, especially verse 10, we're not going to study this in detail because we did in John. We have Jacob's dream of his the ladder into heaven. Jesus in John, I think it's John chapter 2, basically says that ladder that Jacob dreamed about is me. Because he tells his disciples, are you amazed at this? You shall see heaven open and the angels of God ascending and descending on, not a ladder, the Son of Man. In other words, how is it that humans get to heaven? Through Jesus Christ, our Lord. That is the only way. He is the way, he's the truth, he's the life. So I think it's John chapter 2. You can go to that. It's when Jesus is talking to Nathanael, and he comes back to this story. So that's why that's significant, is we have another picture of Jesus here. And we have a promise that God makes to him in the wilderness. And he says, hey, I am going to be with you. And he gives him all of the promises again that he has given to Isaac, or to Abraham and to Isaac. Now Jacob has those as well. And we're going, okay, God, I trust you, but it's going to be hard because I have nothing. And here's where we meet Mr. White. Let's go back to our names. Do you know that's what Laban means? Actually, I had one commentator wrote Whitey. I don't know if that's actually how you can take the Hebrew, but we have Mr. White here. That's what Laban means. And Laban is a masterful deceiver. Jacob has met his match. So here we have God actually continuing to deal with sin and sanctify the sinner. Jacob, when we have met him, he's been deceiving his brother. He deceives his father. Okay? He's not really a great guy, but God meets him in the wilderness, gives him this vision of angels descending the stairway to heaven. And he's like, God is in this place, names it Bethel. And so something is beginning to happen in him. But what do we see? We see conflict between him and Laban, and it's pretty bad. He's like, hey, you love Rachel? Great. Work for me 7 years. He works for him 7 years, and when Jacob is drunk, he gives him the other sister, Leah. And then he gives him Rachel. So he's got 2 wives, but has to work for Rachel for another 7 years. And then there's additional conflict because he's getting pretty wealthy, and Laban is like, we've got some problems here. And so he's like, you know what? I should pay you and you should be on your way. What do you want your wages to be? And Jacob thinks about it and goes, you know what? Give me all of the speckled and spotted sheeps and goats and all of those things, which is a very strange request. It's not the best of the flock. Do you know what Laban does? He takes all of those and takes him a 3 days journey away from Jacob. He's like, okay, so now you won't have anything. And so what we have is a very strange story. Let's actually go and look at this situation here. This is in, I think, chapter 30.
Are there gonna be more names?
Yep.
Okay,
Well, more things with names here.
okay. Just didn't know how far
Chapter
they had to
30.
go.
After, so this is verse 25. What let's see here. Verse 37, sorry. Jacob took branches of fresh poplar, almond, plain wood, and peeled the bark, exposing white strips of the branches. And he set the peeled branches in the troughs in front of the sheep, in the water channels where the sheep came to drink, and the sheep bred when they came to drink. And the flocks bred in front of the branches and bore streaked, speckled, and spotted young. Okay? So he does a number of weird things there. And this is one of those stories where it's like, what is going on? Right?
Yeah, it was mostly the kids.
Yeah. Now, what we do see is he is a master shepherd. There's many examples. We don't have time to get into them, but he is a master shepherd here. He's much smarter than Laban is, and many of Laban's hired hands are pretty, lazy. We see several examples of that. He's doing kind of some weird things here that are associated with kind of calling on the gods for help, of like the stripped branches. Some commentators think that's what he's doing. Others are saying, no, he's just doing a common practice of the time that is not scientific. We know that now, but it was kind of a superstition that they did back then. He's basically doing anything in his power that he can to create these flocks and herds. But what we do read about in the scriptures, and I think this is actually Peter that talks about this, is that it was God, and Jacob eventually will say this as well, God is the one that gives him these flocks. He does a bunch of things by his human strength, but it's God who is doing it, okay? So yes, he's doing weird things with stripping branches and putting those in front of the sheep, and today with our scientific minds we're like, what is that accomplishing? That's not how sheep breed. But in his mind, he's trying to accomplish the will of God by getting all of these flocks. But God is faithful. But the other thing he's going to begin doing or continue doing is sanctifying Jacob. But before we get there, let's have some more fun with Mr. Whitey over here.
Why were the goats that had blotches on them less desirable? I mean,
They're not
meat and
pure.
everything was the same, wasn't it?
Yeah, you have your pure white, which is the symbol of holiness, and so those were desirable. In those days, the pure black ones too, or pure gray, would have also been desirable. That was considered to be a good omen, like the gods had blessed you. And so Jacob picks the one that's in between. It's neither good nor bad, and so everyone was like, "Ew!" Like it's not formal one way or the other. It's just kind of this motley mixture. But
Sacrificing them at this time?
we don't see them doing that here, but that was very consistent with Abraham was still doing Noah was doing sacrifices, Abraham was doing sacrifices. I don't think we see Isaac doing it. We see Job doing it, who would be during this time period. So I think it's safe to say that yes, they were.
Because that's what they would only sacrifice the perfect ones. They didn't sacrifice the others.
Yep. So remember, he deceives Esau with red stew. Here, he takes advantage of Laban with white limbs. He's taking dark limbs, he's stripping off the bark and revealing the white. That word white, what it would say in the Hebrew is he's stripping off the branches. This is in verse 37, exposing the Laban stripes on the branches. That's what the word is.
Now, wait a minute.
Uh-huh.
What's that got to do with sheep or whatever it is?
I mean, to us now, it has nothing to do with it, but it was a superstition. He's like, if the sheep are drinking and they see white, and so he's peeling off some of it, right? So they're striped. So you have black, white, black, white, black, white on a branch, and he throws it in the trough, and the sheep are like, whoa, I like that spotted stuff. Hey, female sheep, let's have babies that are striped. Doesn't work scientifically, but
Yeah,
That's weird.
one of the things it talks about in here is Jacob was intentional in that when the stronger sheep
Yes.
came, he did that. But when it was the weaker sheep that showed up, he didn't.
Yeah, that's also true. He understood breeding, right? And so he's like, I'm going to get the speckled and spotted, and I'm going to get the strongest ones. So yeah, very good. Yep. So God blesses him, despite the fact that we know these things don't work. He didn't know that, but God still made it work. Isn't that weird? He's doing things that have no bearing on breeding except for the weak and the strong. That we do know works. But these other things he's doing, the other thing, we didn't read this, but he has the sheep face the black ones. He has the white ones face the black ones while they're breeding to hopefully get spotted ones as a result. That's not going to work either. But God still used it. It's just
That'd be
wild.
hard.
Yeah. Anyway, so that's the whole thing here. Now this, I don't, some people say it's a sin because he's not relying on God, he's relying on superstition. I don't know if that was superstitious or not. There's not like 100%, we don't know for sure, but we do know that God is still faithful, right? Now let's turn to the important part because we really haven't seen him sanctifying the sinner. We see him pursuing Jacob. He shows up at Bethel, but check this out. This is a few chapters later where he encounters God again. Let me get the right one here. Chapter 32. So he's returning home now. He has become very wealthy. He's defeated Laban. Laban will admit to him that you've absolutely bested me here. And Jacob gets very upset. He's like, you have changed my wages so many times. I have worked for you for so many years, but yet God has still blessed me. And just imagine this ugly, speckled, and spotted horde of animals that he now owns, which he recognizes that God has given him. He actually says that. So that's part of the sanctification process. Number 2 here is that God did it. He acknowledges that. It's for the first time, I think, he's not saying, I did this. God did this. I think that's cool. But check this out. God is with him. Chapter 32, verse 1, Jacob went on his way, and God's angels met him. When he saw them, Jacob said, this is God's camp. So he called the place Mahanaim. And that's also significant. There's a little bit more wordplay here because he's broken his group into multiple camps to try to protect them against Esau. He's heard that Esau's army is coming. And what's really cool is he realizes he does not have the deceptive power to defeat 400 of Esau's men. He tries, he breaks his group, and he has a strategy, right? Heel grabber always has a strategy, but he's beginning to recognize his insufficiency to deal with something at this scale.
This is like 30 years later, though,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, he's much older. Yep. So, but then he realizes God's camp is with me. The Lord of heaven's armies is right here with me.
Don't you think a lot of times when we look back on our life, we realize God was there?
Yeah,
Exactly.
And
yeah.
as we get closer, we see it more and more. So he was pretty far away at that time.
Yep. So we continue on here. We learn about God shows up. Then Esau's army's coming. Oh my goodness, this is terrible. And then we have this wrestling with God. Look at verse 24. Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him until daybreak. And when the man saw that he could not defeat him, he struck Jacob's hip socket as he wrestled and dislocated his hip. And then he said to Jacob, let me go, for it's daybreak. But Jacob said, I will not let you go unless you bless me. What's your name? The man asked. Jacob, he replied. Your name will no longer be Jacob, he said. It will be Israel, because you have struggled with God and with men and have prevailed. Isn't that a great summary of his life? This one who, that's chapter 32, verse 24 through the end of the chapter there. So he's wrestling here with God. And God changes his name. So here's our last name. Israel. So he's gone from heel grabber, which we've seen him wrestling throughout his life. But no longer is he just a heel grabber. He is one who wrestles with God.
No, it wouldn't really be God. It would be an angel or somebody representing God, right?
This is God. He says, you've wrestled with God and with man. So some people think this is Jesus pre-incarnate that he's wrestling with. It's one of those, yes, that face is a good face because what? How is it that he's doing this? Sometimes we see that God eats a meal with Abraham. He shows up, there are 2 angels with him, and he sits in
God's face.
no one can see God in his entirety without being totally obliterated. But somehow he is veiling himself with human flesh or some way. We see that a couple of different times. This is one of those. That somehow he's wrestling with God. But notice, Let's go back up to this again. God has promised to bless him. He saw God's camp. He's wrestling with God, so he heel grabs God and says, "Bless me." Right after he's just admitted that God had blessed him. So he's still in this unfaithfulness wrestle. I mean, aren't we all? He's still wrestling like, "God bless me." You know, he's grabbing onto him. On the other hand, though, that does remind us a little bit about how Jesus told us to pray. Like that woman who was going to the unfaithful judge over and over again and would not give up. So maybe this was from faith, but like he is grasping at God. And I think that's okay. Sometimes we can't grasp anything else. We don't understand anything else. Just crying out to God and grasping him. And so God changes his name to one who wrestles with God. And we're going to see the children of Israel, they are the people who wrestle with God. Interesting. So God has turned that sinful side of him into something that is redeemed.
That's kind of his last deceiver thing, isn't it?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yep. He is
But
going to
she
get
said-
deceived by his
So
kids,
that's
which we'll
his
see next
last
week.
Deceiver
Oh,
kind of action.
okay.
Yeah. All right. We're almost out of time. Just a couple of last things in here. Let's see here. We're going to skip a couple of chapters. Go to chapter 35 because I want you to see his full redemption story here. Chapter 35, verse 1, God said to Jacob, "Get up, go to Bethel and settle there. Build an altar there to God who appeared to you when you fled from your brother Esau." And so I misspoke earlier. I said we don't have an example of this. This is very different. He has set up stones before, and anointed stones. Now he's building an altar. An altar is where you offer a sacrifice. And so he is going to offer a sacrifice. So Jacob said to his family and all those who were with him, "Get rid of your foreign gods that are among you." They had still brought their foreign gods with them. In fact, Laban actually accuses Rachel, of the family of stealing them, which she did. She sat on them and hid them from Laban. So they had still clung to some of that stuff. Whether or not Jacob believed in it, probably not, but his family still had unfaithfulness and sin in the midst of it. And by the way, when Moses writes down these words, he is with the children of Israel wandering in the wilderness. And many of them are looking back to Egypt's gods. So this is a word directly to them. Put away your gods. Trust God.
Did Laban's army try to attack them, you said?
Esau.
Yeah, well, Laban and
I
Esau.
mean-
Laban chases down, so Jacob flees from Laban,
Right.
and Rachel had stolen his household gods.
Okay.
So Laban chases after them, and then God comes to Laban and says, "Dude, you stop, or I will kill you." Basically, you're about to curse someone who I have blessed, and so then Laban comes in peace, but he says, "You guys have stolen my gods. You ran away like thieves in the night. Come on!" And so they have a peaceful resolution there, but and then Jacob gets upset at him, but he leaves without his gods, which is also kind of interesting. But those gods remained. And so then when Esau's army is coming to attack, God intervenes. They leave peacefully as well. So we see, again, this war against the seed. I have not continued to write some things down here, is we see protection from Laban. We see protection from Esau's army. Esau really has explicitly an army. I think Laban comes with men, but we're not really certain the size. I'd have to go back and look. But I think Esau's army has like 400 men in it. And both times, there's no fighting. It's complete peace that God brings in both situations, which is really incredible.
Well, then in chapter 35, it says Jacob returns to Bethel. Who's
Yep.
in Bethel?
Bethel is where he had that dream of
Okay,
the ladder.
It's not where Laban is.
No.
Okay. got
Yeah,
it.
he returns to that spot where God met him. He settles down there, and he's going to build an altar. He tells his family, put away your foreign gods, purify yourself, change your clothes. Let's get up and go to Bethel. I'll build an altar there to God who answered me in my day of distress, and he has been with me, look at that, wherever I have gone. And then we see the result of that they purge idolatry from among them. And so we have moved through each of these. God has dealt with sin. There's all these consequences. We have people that are threatening to kill Jacob, right? Esau wants to kill him. Laban keeps deceiving Jacob over and over again. But yet God is faithful and keeps pushing away those evils and dealing with it. Unfortunately, they have lasting consequences, as we will see. Esau's descendants are going to be enemies of Israel. Ishmael's descendants are going to be enemies of Israel. But for now, there's peace. He sanctified Jacob, who at the beginning was doing everything in his power, in his own human strength, and little by little is focused completely on God, to now the fact that he's like, you know what? All of you get rid of your foreign gods. And he's been completely, his name is now changed completely to one wrestling with God. He has a physical, permanent limp for the rest of his life as a result of wrestling with God. That is a constant reminder with every painful step about how he used to wrestle with God, or apart from God, with men, but now he wrestles with God. In other words, it's this faith and trust thing, but he's still dealing with sin. And God has accomplished his mission, or at least the next step in his mission, where they are now settled there in Bethel. The seed has been protected, and he's fulfilled part of the promise to Abraham, because we saw Abraham was promised this huge nation. Look up at the stars, look at the sand on the seashore. But Sarah was barren, and then eventually had one child. And then Isaac had Jacob and Esau. But now Jacob has all of these kids. And we didn't really look into the details of them. It's a very fascinating and just like, oh my goodness, struggle between two women who want to get the best of each other. But God uses all of that sin to bring about the 12 tribes of Israel. Okay, we'll look into that a little bit more, I think, next week. We're going to conclude Genesis, so we'll do the rest of Genesis next week. Well, next week I'm going to be on vacation. The week after that, Lord willing, we will finish up Genesis, so we're going to look at the rest of the 12. So we have 2 tribes of Israel that are not spoken for, Ephraim and Manasseh. They are Joseph's sons. Joseph is not one of the 12 tribes, but all the brothers that have been born so far, those are the 12 tribes. Then 2 more come from Joseph.
Biologically now, I'm thinking science, okay?
Yeah.
Are these the only, this is a direct line, right, from Adam and Eve, right?
Yep.
So
Yep.
where does the rest of the world get populated?
Yeah, good question. So we see that they, in Genesis chapter 11, they spread out from the Tower of Babel
Okay.
and start spreading into the world. Now, the scriptures don't talk about a lot of the details, but we can actually see that same spread when we study pottery fragments. That same spread happens, and it matches what's described in the scriptures. But then from there, we're not relying on, we don't have, the scriptures don't detail what happens, but it looks like from the records, there's this central place in history where people spread out from, and it also happens to be pretty close to the mountains of Ararat, where Noah's Ark would have been, and then we see them spreading out through the globe. So, anyway.
So when the flood came, everything was just all the people that were there were killed, right?
Yeah.
So it started all over again.
Started all over, yep.
Mhm.
So we have everybody spreading out from there. Yep.
It still all came from Adam and Eve.
Yep, all from Adam and Eve. Otherwise, if Christ died as a human, it would not have covered other human lines that were not descended from Adam and Eve. Like, you need to have a central figure that represents all of them legally, genetically. So,
Are we doing the whole Old Testament?
mm-hmm.
Okay, so we're gonna go to Leviticus?
Yep,
Oh, good.
yep, that'll be fun.
Yes, that'll be horrible.
All right. Well, let's stop there. I realize, obviously, there's a lot of things that we didn't get to in this, and that's okay. That's dizzying. But we covered quite a bit of what's here, and I hope this key principle sticks with you and is something you can dig into. What I encourage you to do is take that then. That's not an application, that's a principle. So then you take from that and say, well, how would I apply this to my life? If it's true that that's what the scripture here is teaching, where in my life am I doing things in my own strength, as an example? Where am I being unfaithful? Where do I see God's faithfulness, to borrow from your language earlier, of looking back on my life, where has God been active? Where can I trust him more? What sins are in my life that I need him to deal with? What foreign gods do I have in my life that I need to get rid of, right? That's where you start getting the applications from. So we go to what is the scripture teaching, and then how can I extract the principle from that, and then you start asking yourself questions based on that. How does this apply to me? Okay? All right, let's pray. Lord God, I thank you for your word. Help us to be faithful in continuing to read it and study it and apply it to our lives. I ask that you would help us in this journey. There's still just so much in the scriptures to look at, and it's difficult to do it in an overview so fast, but yet I thank you for your help in that and ask you to continue to help us to understand. And then with all the remaining questions we have, to just that would help us to study it more. I ask that you would help us as a church now as we focus our attention towards the Saturate Belton and Raymore project. You give us the strength and wisdom to do that you'd call the people to be able to be there and help with that and do that as well. We ask in your name. Amen.
Thank you for saying that, 'cause